Hey, Marc Cunningham with Grace Property Management here. A few months ago, we recorded one of these videos and we called it our top 5 lease agreement clauses, and that far and away has been the most commented on, the most watched video we've done. So we're creating a part 2. What are the second top 5 lease agreement clauses that we recommend for all property management companies to have in place as you deal with tenants? So the first one of these relates to access. Once you have a tenant in place, how do you as the PM access the property? Well, you want to have a clause in your lease agreement, and it may say something like this. This is the actual clause from our lease agreement. Agent may enter property for any inspection purposes with a 24-hour notice to tenant. Now, your clause doesn't need to be exactly like this, but you want to have some type of a clause in there that grants you as the property management company access with a reasonable notice, whatever that is, into the property so that you don't have problems trying to get into your property to see what's going on. Review your lease. Ensure that you have this inspection clause in place. Now, the second aspect we want to talk about is when is rent considered late? Different property management companies have different late terms, late fees built in, but one thing you want to do as you define your late fee or when rent is considered late is be very, very specific on when it is late. So for years, for example, we just said in our lease that rent is considered late after the 3rd day of the month. Well, what does that mean exactly? Does that mean if somebody comes in at 10 o'clock p.m. on the 3rd day of the month and they slide the check through the drop slot in the door, that it's considered on time? And if they get there at 12:01, it's late? I mean, how do you define that? So recently, we made a change in our lease agreement to narrow that down, and this is what it says. If your rent is not received on or before 12 o'clock noon on the 3rd day of the month, you will pay a late charge of, and then put in whatever late fee you happen to charge. But we love that 12 o'clock noon deadline because we're in the office at 12 o'clock noon. So if they come in at 11:59 and they beat the clock, it's on time. Once we hit 12 o'clock noon, we're processing those late fee notices, getting those demand notices out to be prepared. But I like the 12 o'clock noon deadline. It just gives you a little bit more control for that process of processing rents as they're received. Number 3, utility transfers. New tenants moving in, it's such a hassle, isn't it? Making sure that they transfer all their utilities. Do they do it before they move in? Do they do it after they move in? Do you do it for them? How does that work? Well, sometimes we do it for them. We don't like to. We encourage them to do it, but we have a clause in our lease that addresses it, and it says this. Failure to transfer utilities within 3 days after the lease start date will result in a charge of, and put in what you think is appropriate, X number of dollars per bill that the landlord transfers. We want to be realistic with this for our tenants and give them an opportunity to transfer because they don't always get it done before they move in, and that's okay, but we don't want it to go beyond 3 days. They've got 3 days to get those transfers done. And on day 3, we're going to call the utility companies, and if they haven't transferred it, we're going to do it for them, but they're going to be billed per the terms of the lease agreement. Management agreement clause number 4 relates to having multiple residents in the property. Let's say you've got roommates. Let's say you've got 3 roommates, 4 roommates. You want to make sure that you are legally able to talk to one roommate as if you are talking to all of them legally. So you want to have a clause in your lease agreement that's going to have the title maybe something to do with jointly and severally liable. It means all of you tenants are one legal person. We're not separating you out just because you paid a portion of the rent doesn't mean I can't evict you and I can evict your roommate. No, you're all one legal person. So the clause says this. Each resident is jointly and severally liable for all lease contract obligations. If you or any guest or occupant violates the lease contract, all residents are considered to have violated the lease contract. This is an important provision because you want to talk to one tenant and have that legally be in effect that you're talking to all. If you serve a notice upon one, it's legally served upon all. So have this joint and several liability clause in your lease agreement. Now, obviously, different states have different rules governing lease agreements. If you want to use this language, feel free, but have your attorney review it to ensure it's proper for your state. Now, before I get to number 5, let me tell you 2 quick current event issues that are going on. If you are interested in attending our Pulling Back the Curtain event come Atlanta in January, check that out. We're bringing that on for a second go-around in Atlanta. It's going to be an awesome event. We're going to have a 1-day session. We're going to have an optional day 2 session. This is going to be kind of a small, intimate event. More information on the website, so check out our Pulling Back the Curtain in Atlanta coming up, depending on when you're watching this video. It's going to be in January 2019. Second thing real quickly is, I do a fair amount of individual one-on-one coaching. I keep a very small group of clients, and as of next month, I'm going to have one opening on that. So if you've thought about getting some individual coaching, and you want to potentially talk about that, drop me an email. Be happy to send you some information on that. All right, number 5, as it relates to damage reimbursements. You're doing an inspection on a property, you see a hole's been knocked in the wall. How do you legally go through the process of charging your tenant? We all think we can do that, and we hopefully can, but your your lease agreement must have some language in the lease agreement allowing you to do so. So our lease agreement says this: within 30 days of notice, you will reimburse us for loss, damage, repair, or service calls where the cost of the repair caused in the premises by you or any guest or occupants is because of improper use or negligence. Now that's a mouthful, I get it. This is obviously written by an attorney. But the point is, this gives us the authority to send them the bill for the hole in the wall that they caused, and they've got 30 days to get it paid. Now hopefully you have clauses like that in your lease agreement and other good ones and even better ones. But pull out your lease agreement, review it. As we finish the year and look to the new year, now is a great time to make those changes in your lease agreement. Ensure it's up to par on how you want it to be so that you have a healthy, strong relationship between you and your tenant.